I've had several friends pass away that were young. When I say young, they were in their 50s. And the furthest thing from anyone's mind is them passing away. They weren't even sick. That was what was so strange. And what leads me up to this is you never know when your last day on earth is. And you have got to make plans. And there's no better way than attorney Debbie Baker. Good morning, attorney.
Oh my gosh, it's formal this month. Good morning, Steve.
I didn't mean to start the show.
No, I'm teasing. I'm teasing. Well, that's quite an intro about your friends.
Yeah, I thought about you this past week because, you know, we all think we're indispensable. I mean, nothing's ever going to happen to us. But when you're in your 50s, you really don't think anything is going to happen health-wise.
No. And
you end up, I don't know if they had any kind of estate planning or not, but I think, and I'm not going to get political, but I have my reasons why I think that they are no longer with us. But I'm trying to make the point not to wait. Pick up that phone, call Attorney Baker, go sit down with her, and make sure that not only that you've done estate planning, but it's been done right. Would you not agree, Debbie?
Well, I agree that it needs to be done and done right. Whether they have to sit down with me or not is, I mean, that would be really interesting. But anyway, I definitely agree that it's easy to think we're invulnerable. It's easy to think it'll never happen to us, whatever that means. Car accidents, you know, motorcycle accidents. It just never occurs. Whether we're the cause of it or the effect of it, it generally doesn't call. I had a call this morning from somebody who I don't know how old she is, but she's having brain surgery in 2.5 weeks. And it occurred to her that maybe she needs to put something in place, you know, just for now, so people can take care of her now. And then, you know, heaven forbid, God forbid, that she doesn't come out of the brain surgery, or she doesn't come out of it well. And I really do appreciate it. It's hard for people to get their minds around that it might happen to them. And it's really easy to avoid until they run into a situation like you just described with you, Steve. Now, you told me months ago that you and Sophia have everything in place. But the kind of thing is that this is that situation that you just had is also the kind of thing that wakes people up and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened to Joe. You know, I just saw him yesterday.
Right.
And he ran a marathon last month and now he's not here. Maybe it's time to put things on paper. So, yeah. Yep, and we've talked about this before too. I had somebody I met recently who's got older children, meaning teenagers over the age of 18. And I said, you know, your teenager needs something, and you know why? I said, well, now that they're 18, you can't do anything for them anymore, and that doesn't drive fathers nearly as crazy as it drives mothers. That, you know, stereotypically can't do anything. So yeah, that's really sad. And years ago, I heard a guy talk about life insurance, and I still don't understand life insurance. But I remember him telling the story of he'd been at he was a top producer in the industry, and he'd been at a conference, and somebody talked about the fact that they had been a board member somewhere and had felt out of discomfort not to ask everybody on the board if they had their life insurance in place. And then one of their members died, leaving two young children, and the board raised enough to pay for a funeral, but there was nobody delivering a check. And he never left anywhere ever again without asking people if they were covered. And I've taken that. I ask everybody, do you have a plan? And some people say yes, some people say no. people who say no. I said, listen, it doesn't matter if you work with me. It matters that you work with somebody and get it done, because you leave your family in a horrible situation, which you would not choose to leave them in. It's hard enough to grieve, but don't make it harder by not having directions.
We had
I hope all your friends had it in place.
yeah, I think about, and we've talked about this, as wealthy as Prince was, and he had all these advisors around him, didn't even have a simple will.
Well, people do think, my estate can handle it. There are people with probably substantial means who think, well, my estate can pay for it, which is true. But it's the emotional grief of the paying. Even if, recently I've had 2 or 3 people say, I have a will and everything goes to my child. I went, okay, everything goes to your child. But if it's just that, all you have in your will is my child gets all my money and my child gets my home, that child is going to have to go to court to get the right to have it. Well, he's my only child. I said, I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying that it's not like it's not a simple handoff. It's not a simple handoff to your child. Yeah. And there are things you can do, which makes it a reasonably simple handoff. But without doing those things, it becomes complicated. And I met a couple last week who were witnesses for a friend of mine, and they have things in place. And I said, well, let's split your house. Well, our son will get the house when we die. I said, well, again, not easily. And they said, well, when we did our original documents, why don't people tell us those things? I said, I have no answer for that. I really have no answer for that.
Right.
I've met people who financial planners did not say they had to name beneficiaries or have allowed them to name minor children as beneficiaries. I can't answer those questions. I don't know. But actually, in fairness to the professionals involved, you and I, Steve, have both had numerous occasions where people have told us things and we either can't hear them or we won't hear them. And then all of a sudden, when it becomes relevant, it's like, why didn't you tell me? And right. I know this has happened countless times with my husband. I'll say, Steve just told me this, and I'm probably pretty certain you've told me that a dozen times over the last year. And he's finally learned to say, I'm just glad you finally heard it. So maybe these people do tell them, but they don't have right. another answer. And so in fairness to the professionals, but let's see, on October 5th, I will have had my license for 8 years. And when I tell people, I said, I didn't know this stuff 8 years ago. There's no reason you should know it at all. But you need to talk to somebody about getting it done. Will you stay? Well, yeah, it's important.
Listen, I want to talk about goals. And, like, where am I going to live? Who's going to take care of me?
Right.
How am I going to pay for it? Let's talk about those, Debbie.
Okay. So the thing I learn more and more is the documents that people need now, like Stevie, you were talking before, excuse me, my cat's shedding in my nose here. You were talking earlier about, somebody having to go to a hospital to get a test. Okay. So the thing that happens is, again, going back to vulnerability or invulnerability, we don't think about stuff happening which leaves us incapacitated. And it's really important to think about, like, what happens if I get incapacitated? Where am I going to live? What were the other 2 questions? Where am I going to live?
Who's going to pay for it?
Who's going to pay for it? Okay. And I've started talking, certainly with my older clients. I mean, older, I mean in their 70s, maybe 80s, and ones who aren't well, regardless of their age. People have current powers of attorney, but the powers of attorney don't allow for somebody to do applications for government benefits. So the person I signed last week had a power of attorney, but it didn't allow for that. And if for some strange reason she needed to be in a nursing home, Medicare, which doesn't apply to people under 65, unless they're disabled, doesn't pay for nursing home care. So it's
wow.
And people understandably think it does. I mean, it's you know, they think Medicare covers everything, but it doesn't. So where will I live is a really important question to ask. Not one for somebody in their 20s. I mean, they could ask it if they weren't already disabled. Why would they? But as people get older, it's something to consider. And who'll pay for it is another thing. I mean, what I've learned recently in terms of looking at some elder law planning is being prepared to apply for Medicaid for government benefits is not about taking a handout. It's about preserving your assets. So let's say that, you know, with you and Sophia, something happened where, you know, you needed some kind of extraordinary care. You own your home together. Let's just say you need to protect Sophia. I mean, her resources need to protect it. You don't want her to have to go broke so you can get government benefits. So part of the whole idea is, how do you take advantage of what the government has available legally, ethically, morally? And so if you need even care for a short while, you know that she's going to be okay. She hasn't had to spend down your last dollar, I mean your combined last dollar, to get benefits. So that's kind of where will I live, who will pay for it. And people, you know, back to people who have lots of resources who don't do planning because they know their estate can pay for it. Certainly there are a lot of people who wouldn't ever need those benefits. But for the most part, we're talking about not people in quite the position Prince was in, but people who have sufficient assets where they'll be able to do it. They'll be able to pay for private care or whatever. It's a really, really important subject. And as I've moved along in this legal practice, I've become more aware of it's an uncomfortable conversation and people need to have it. Yeah.
Yes. You know, I have Medicare, Debbie, but I cannot tell you what is the difference in Medicare and Medicaid.
Okay. So Medicare is something you get when you're 65, or you get if you've been collecting Social Security disability for 2 years, you will, regardless of your age, you'll get Medicare. So that's health care coverage. Okay, that's health care coverage. Okay. Medicaid is asset and income based. So there's no means testing for Medicare. You don't have to have a certain income or above a certain income to qualify for Medicare. To do Medicaid, you're within a constrained asset amount and income amount. So nationally, the individual income amount right now for Medicaid is $2,742. It gets adjusted every year. That's income. So people have to look at if you're getting required minimum distributions, if you're getting a pension, if you're, you know, and you're earning more than that, then you have to get under that to qualify for Medicaid. Assets, you can't have more than $2,000 in assets. Well, lots of people keep more than $2,000 in a checking account. So it's a very different. You don't have to plan for Medicare. You're going to get Medicare. So if you reach age 65, you're going to get it. If you need Medicaid, so government supports what you already have to get benefits, nursing home, skilled nursing home, long-term care, then that becomes a very different conversation. So there's a big difference between the two. Big difference between the two. And because again, if you get to be 65, you're 65 in, you know, you get your Medicare. Medicaid, not so much.
Do you pay for Medicaid?
Well, your taxes pay for Medicaid, certainly, but not no. It's not like if you get your Social Security distribution and it shows that this as much has been taken out for your Part A, Part B, or whatever. Nothing like that. Medicaid is certainly supported by tax revenue, but it's not. You have no direct there's no more direct payment by you into that system, and it differs by state. It's income. I think the asset is 50 states, but the income is different per state. So, you know, Florida has chosen in certain situations not to expand Medicaid. Other states have chosen to expand Medicaid, like for access to children. There are a lot of children who get Medicaid because their parents don't earn enough and they need medical care.
Debbie, I always have wanted to, and we still have we have
Yes.
over 5 minutes, but I still always at the end of the show want to really give you kudos. And it's always because I get so interested in how you explain everything. But I'm going to do this today, so I make sure I do this. My Sophia always tells me that she wished she would have become an attorney. And, it's so late in life now that she'll never fulfill that wish. But you did that.
Well, you haven't had her call me. Yeah. Yeah, I did that. Yeah.
You did that, Debbie. And I mean, and you're not, she's much older than you are, but I'm just saying, you decided somewhat in midlife to become an attorney, and you did it.
I did.
Do you ever pinch yourself?
No, because I've said this before. See, I think if it hadn't been a walk of faith, I'd probably pinch myself all the time. But it was God said go to law school. So and then once I figured out that it could happen, I just did it. But I always think it's interesting for people to say they're too old or it's too late or whatever.
I wish I would have.
And I wish I would have and people said that to me. I said, well, just go. Well, I said, stop. Don't make excuses. I mean, if you want to go, go. If you don't want to go, don't go. But don't make excuses. And recently somebody posted on Facebook, what did you always want to do? What did you want to do when you were younger? And I said, well, I always wanted to be a doctor, always wanted to be a doctor. And I got to be a doctor almost 50 years to the day after I graduated from high school. Wasn't a medical doctor, but I was a doctor of law. And I had not realized that until shortly before I graduated. And I still get moved by that because that was my dream always, to be a doctor. But when people say, and you can tell Sophia, I've had 3 people complete their undergraduate, they're either AAs or their BAs or a law degree using me as an inspiration, which was not what I had set out to do. And it's so humbling to know that that's the case. So, if anybody who's watching, listening, I mean, if you have something that you want to do, you need to find, if it's not, it's not a walk of faith, but it's something you want, find the people around you who will support you to do it. And you need people around you, not who are going to not say, are you sure? Or not say, do you really? But they're not going to ask you to defend yourself. They're going to be there to stand with you as you pursue the dream. And the people who don't want to do that, so going to law school, 2 of my brothers were just enthralled and tickled. And my older brother said, well, why don't you just be a paralegal? And I went, well, that wasn't what I heard. And I don't take orders well. So paralegal wasn't going to work for me. He said, but your age, I said, my age is that has nothing to do with, what does that have to do with it? Well, what about the money? What has nothing to do with it. Has to do with, this is the path I'm on. And if you're not going to support me, then go away for 4 years. I mean, it's okay. I understand you love me, but you're not helping here.
Right. And Debbie, let me go one more step even further. Not only did you become an attorney, but of all areas of law to practice, you went into an area of law that you really, truly have to really care for other people. Because there's a lot of emotion that's involved in estate planning.
Yeah. There is.
So it shows where your heart is. That of all areas, I mean, the easiest would have probably been family law. You could have started making money right away, but you went into estate planning, which I know a lot of estate planning attorneys from Ask the Experts. You really, really have to care about people, and it's so obvious that you do.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a real gift. God knew what he was doing.
Always.
He knew
He's
it.
smart.
He knew what he was
Smarter than
doing. He hasn't told me he made a mistake. And every time I talk somebody out of needing me, because there's a way to do what they want to do without needing a lawyer, or I can direct them to, if it's not me, I can direct them. I've always been driven to be of service. There's nothing more that gives me greater pleasure than to be of service. So this woman who called me this morning, who's going to have, she says, well, we need to talk about fees, and we need to talk about time. I said, well, my fees are exorbitant and it'll take endless time. And then I laughed. I said, here's the thing. We'll make it work. We will get it done before October 13th. Not to worry. We'll have it done and you'll be fine. And, I've done several like that, which are even a faster turnaround than that. Because if I can give you peace of mind going into the hospital, Steve, or a friend of yours, so that your loved ones have peace of mind, there's just no greater joy. There's no greater joy.
Well, we have run out of time. For those of you who are listening on radio, Debbie, give everybody your phone number and how they can reach you.
Sure. I'm in Tampa at 813-586-1332. I'm licensed in the state of Florida. But if you have somebody who has a question, there's general knowledge I can provide, and I'm always glad to have a conversation. Always.
Well, as always, I love talking to you. Debbie will be back with us again the last Monday of the month in October. God bless you.
Too, kiddo.
Thank you, Debbie.
Yeah, my pleasure. Have a great day.